Escape room employees of Reddit, what was the weirdest escape tactic you have seen? I've learned not to make the final stage a lock with a key, because dang if I haven't met some of the best lockpicks in the state. I had a room solve this by saying it only counted if you used a key to unlock it, otherwise they wouldn't count you as escaped. My family did an escape room and there was a room with a phone that connected to 3 other rooms. The doors only beeped when you dialed the right numbers on the phone, and so my sister just walked up and pressed redial and the last door opened. We have a record of 7.5 minutes to complete the room. And now they dial a random number before letting in a new group. Someone honestly believed that throwing himself at the door counts as solving the riddle. Since that fateful day I tell every group that it is not necessary to throw yourself at doors. My brother and I once got out of a room by taking a magnet from the previous puzzle and using it to lift a key out of a small opening in a locked box. There were 6 of us and nobody could figure out the last clue, so we improvised. Got out with 3 minutes to spare. Unlike all the posts about just picking the lock, that actually sounds like it's in the spirit of the room. There was a escape room themed after a school with a madman's lab in it. There was a part where you had to match numbers with a Morse code's letter number in the alphabet. There was of course a dictionary of the Morse code, but a group which finished that part in 15s without using the dictionary. Usually, people need at least 3 minutes for it, and then, after that you had to pump a pump to raise a ball with a key out of a 1.2 meters tube. But instead of simply pumping the thing, a guy took out an extendable stick and silver duct tape, then pulled the ball out of there. They finished the whole room in 30 minutes. My question is, why did he have an extendable stick with silver duct tape in his coat's inner pocket? Sounds like they had done the room before and went back prepared for a speedrun. There was a group of people who was doing a space-themed escape room. In one of the rooms, there was an astronaut suit which was supposed to just serve as a prop. But one of the members thought that it might be needed to solve one of the rooms. So he ended up traversing through the entire escape room while wearing an astronaut suit. And no, it wasn't needed to solve anything. Note, this was posted on another thread similar to this one. Sounds like how I play D&D. I was once in an escape room with a mate a few years older than me. We went to the same school where tradition stated you must pull the lockers from the wall at least once a day. So, we went in there, saw a locker, and leant it forwards like tradition stated. Behind it was a laminated sheet of paper which said, "Please put the locker back." We lost it, and apparently so did the person watching us through the cameras, because we just didn't hesitate at all. We had a code hidden on a thermochromatic mug. There was also a tea bag, a kettle and a paper clue saying to make a cup of tea. Had a group get stuck because they thought it was joking and never made the tea. How I imagine it went down. Rob, the clue says to make tea, so let's make some. Bob, but that's too obvious. I run one where you work at a time travel agency. The person walked out of the room mid-game. We don't lock them for fire reasons, and exclaimed their victory. Yeah, he came from the future. Sure thing he knew that he will have won the game. A friend of mine runs an escape room and told me this story. A group was in a room that just so happened to have a drop ceiling. You know, the ones with the tiles you can lift up on and I guess go inside if you need to? Well, that's what this group decided to do. The employee kept hearing weird thumps and bumps, so he went in to check on everything and found 2 people up inside the ceiling. There was nothing in the ceiling. I've done that room and there is no indication that you should go into the ceiling. Why would they think that was an okay thing to do? The escape room company has now added don't go in the ceiling to their pre-game rules safety spiel. I mean, if they had kept crawling in the ceiling, eventually, they could have escaped by pulling up one of the tiles that's above the hallway or lobby. While doing an escape room, the bottom drawer was locked and one of the members of our party of randoms were trying a long time to try and open it. The top drawer wasn't locked, so I just pulled it all the way out. Then I reached in the drawer to grab the item. Apparently that's not the solution, but the property owners running the game for us got a kick out of it. I've done the same thing before and got a similar response. I think it's bad room design. Some escape rooms that I've been to modify their drawers to make this impossible if not intended. It feels like a puzzle to me, if it's not at least warn us, because it's creative navigation of the space, which is really what the whole jam is. Not an employee, but but I was in a horror escape room in China. There were 9 of us in total, and we reached a point where we were in a small room together. To advance to the next room, one of the girls, of whom there were 3, had to bring an apple to the ghost in the previous room, alone. All 3 girls were scared shitless and refused to leave. Check with supervisor through the walkie-talkie. Definitely has to be a girl to fit with the story. Finally, with no path forward, one of the guys opens the door and yells into the hallway, "Can I go if I'm gay?" Some discussion ensues on the walkie-talkie about this point, but they eventually relented. I've done 3 escape rooms and I am notoriously bad at them. My shining example was when it was just me and a friend doing the escape a first time. We stunk and didn't escape the room. The employee came in and showed us what clues we had left in order to open the door. It was like 5 more steps and I thought, well, that sucks. But 5 steps isn't that bad. And then the employee opened the door to show us the other room we were supposed to have gone into after the 5 steps. This room had even more puzzles to complete, which opened into another room. All in all, we completed like 7% of the puzzles on an escape room that had a 40% success rate. I've come to terms with escape rooms not being my forte. Not an employee, but I was in an escape room with my GF. She found a lock and just put in some random numbers and it opened. We then had a key that we could not use. An employee who was watching us on the camera asked how the frick we got that key without having the book with the code. Next level lockpicking GF. Yes, same thing happened here in one of them. My colleague randomly put numbers in a box in the middle of the table. It opened and had a key which opened the door and it was over in about 6 minutes. We got to do the other room, which was cool. Not an employee, but they handcuffed us to an old metal bed frame. I had enough leeway to unscrew the link that connected them and then just walked around with handcuffs around my wrists. I then did the same for the others and we broke out shortly thereafter. When the employee saw us walk out with the handcuffs, he just shook his head and said we were supposed to use a key to get them off. Well, yeah, you were supposed to use the key, but if the system can be cheated, it needs to be changed anyway in the sake of perpetual betterment of life. Not an employee, but once me and my friends were separated in 2 rooms which both had telephones to communicate to each other. I just decided yelling "trough the door" to talk was the way to go. The employee had to tell us that the phones were not just Dago. In one of our rooms there is a blind spot in the corner where we really can't see anything, and some guy once pulled off parts of the wall, pulled even more on the cables behind that, and somehow, we don't know how, cut them open and then he got shocked. It wasn't too bad. We only used low voltage components, but still he was rather quickly out of the room, all things considered. Don't worry, English is my first and only language, and I consider myself pretty well versed, and I wasn't aware of the difference between electrocuted and shocked. Not an employee, but at the last room I did, the very last moment you enter a very small room with only 2 similar buttons and a text, "Press the good one to exit." Of course both of them opened the door. We asked the employee why do that. The average time for this enigma is 5 minutes. Not an employee, but a friend of mine's group couldn't get out, so they just lifted the pins out of the hinges of the door. Employee said that nobody had ever done that before. Group of colleagues popped the hinges off a lockbox to get the final key. However, we felt bad, so then did it all chronologically and just about made it out 20 minutes later. Was told we should have just used the key. Like most other people in this thread, I am not an employee, just a player. Did an escape room with an ex's parents. I got along great with the dad and we are both pretty weird nerds. Came to a part where there were just 1s and 0s on a sheet of paper. He and I spent about 15 minutes translating binary when you were just supposed to count the 1s on each line for a padlock code. A good tip I've heard is if your average guy doesn't know it, it's not the solution. If you have a very specialized skill like encyclopedic knowledge of history or the ability to completely disassemble a light fixture quickly, you probably won't actually have to use it. I worked at an escape room for about a year, but one group managed to always stay in my mind. I was a group of 4 women, maybe in their 50s, drunk out of their mind. They started off the room quite well with a pace that would allow them to escape, but then they encountered what we considered to be the easiest puzzle in the room. Basically they get a long magnet and use it to pull a key out of a locked window. However, they for some god unknown reason could not figure this out. After a bit of trying they asked for a clue. I don't remember exactly what I said, but it was something along the lines of, remember that magnet stick you guys got? Some might call it the key to success. Simultaneously they all sigh, which is a common reaction when people realize that an answer to a puzzle was so simple. But no, they didn't understand the clue. Instead they shoved books into the window in hopes of getting the key, which is something we specifically tell them not to do. Had to end up pulling them from the room as they started ripping apart the books. TLDR, listen to your freaking operator. I guess that's why you were not allowed to show up drunk in almost all rooms I've been to. I often read Reddit threads for fun but never contribute, so I've never gotten an account. I just got one so I could share this story. Working at an escape room I have a lot of stories, but this one will forever be my favorite. It happened a little over a year ago now. A guy was wearing a baseball cap when he went into the room and shortly after took it off and placed it down somewhere. About 7-10 minutes later, he picked it up and started searching it for clues or hidden messages. His wife needed to remind him that that was his own hat, and it actually took some convincing. He really didn't believe her at first. I do a zombie escape room. Once as the zombie, several customers sung Sweet Caroline as an attempt to distract me. Another poorly recited the plot of The Terminator. Needless to say they didn't escape. Not an employee, but I once did an escape room in NYC called The Dig. You eventually enter a second room that has dirt on the floor. There's also a shovel as a prop. The worker there warned us that we shouldn't actually dig because apparently someone previously entered that. Immediately grabbed the shovel and started digging. On the 8th floor, in an office building. I work at an escape room in Sweden and we use live actors in our games. One time when one of my colleges entered in character, a group of people decided to grab him and tickle him so that he would let them out. Because they thought that was a great tactic. Worst part is that when they got out, the normal way, they were very proud of their actions and though they were really funny. This sounds cute in theory, but if I was the employee I would be extremely, oh so very angry. My wife and I went to a themed escape game a few weeks ago. While the guy was going over the rules he mentioned, don't pull up the floor. So we had to ask, why is that a rule? That day, like 4 hours earlier, a group was in the same escape room we were going into and it has a part in a cabin. So it's got the flooring of an old cabin in the woods. So it was old planks. Well, this group got stuck and rather than ask for a clue, they started ripping up the floor. I had a similar experience in a similar room. They told us one jacked guy came in and just ripped the lock off the final door. I don't even understand why you think that would be a solution or why that would be fun. Not an employee, but something I did once in an escape room. It was a brand new escape room business, so the cameras hadn't been installed in the rooms yet. The game master told us to knock on the wall if we needed anything because they couldn't see or hear what was going on while we were playing. My wife and I were the only 2 people doing the escape room. The theme was ancient Egypt and we got to a room that had a large sarcophagus that could open and had what looked like pistons attached to the bed of the sarcophagus. In the corner was a large mummy and I became convinced that the sarcophagus was a pressure plate that needed the mummy. My wife and I put the mummy into the sarcophagus and nothing happened. We were confused, but continued on. Flash forward to us winning the game and talking with the game master. Me, by the way, why did we have to put the mummy in the sarcophagus? It didn't do anything. Gamma master. Ha, me. We put the mummy in the corner in the large sarcophagus but it didn't do anything in the room. Our game master busted out laughing and said she had never seen someone try doing that. We all had a good laugh. To this day, if we are stumped in an escape room, my wife suggests I put the mummy in the sarcophagus. I was a player in a room where Sherlock Holmes had been kidnapped by Jack the Ripper and we had to interpret the clues he left about where he'd been taken. Spoiler, we didn't do it in time and he dead now. One clue was a chessboard in check position. A paper note on the board said Watson, check to inform us it was our turn. Moving the king to the only legal spot triggered a magnetic switch inside the table which unlocked a drawer holding the next clue. I figured this out only after we moved all the pieces around the board randomly trying to make something happen, ruining our chances of finding the right setup. My teammate unplugged the chess table to disengage the electromagnet holding the drawer closed and we got our clue. Beautiful. I have tons of stories about destructive players. So instead, how about a weird and actually intelligent method? After my briefing video, the players started to run around the room all talking out loud, not necessarily talking to each other. I thought that there was no way they were going to escape with how disorganized they were. Boy, was I wrong. One of the group members shouts "Pumpinacle" and everyone else shut up immediately. They continued to play like this through the rest of the game. Whenever one of them had either found something interesting or figured out an answer, they would shout "Pumpinacle" and immediately everyone else would give them their full attention. They got out in 30 minutes and 0 clues, in a room with a 20% success rate, and average time to complete is 45-50 minutes. One of the better groups that I've managed seen. Our rooms had a lot of decorative touches. Lots of pretty knickknacks just to enhance the mood. One of our rooms had a Victorian parlor smoking room feel, and on the mantle was a small statue of a bird of some sort. One gentleman decided to pick up and carry the eagle for about 45 minutes. But guys, this eagle has to be for something. He tried placing it on things, opening it, using it as a key. Thank goodness he didn't try to use to bang something open. When the group finally escaped, he was at the door and quickly asked me what was the eagle for. Oh, nothing. It's just a decoration. He had done absolutely nothing to help his group progress. So he walks over and sets the statue down, and lets out a heavy sigh. He seemed absolutely crushed. Meanwhile, the rest of his group was partying and celebrating their success. Yes, fixating on something is a bad move in escape rooms. I worked one where a roulette table was one of the answers. Now we didn't want to rig a roulette wheel, so we gave the lock multiple answers. Now this family comes through and plays it and gets double zeros, and they assume it's rigged to land on double zeros. Pretty common assumption. They spin it again. Lands on double zeros again. I worked there for about a year and I don't think I'll ever see something like that again. The family didn't make it out of the room, but they were extremely close. This reminds me of the time I lost the $400 I was up with at the casino. I left with as much as I walked in with though. I put down 200 covering each of the 15s. Double zero landed. Repeated. Double zero. Told everyone to have a nice night after that. I was in a room in Dallas where it was a different type of escape room. You break into a bank vault and you have hundreds of lockboxes on the wall. Each has its own escape room puzzle, and the more you get, the more money you escape with. Also in the corner is an old style safe. I went with a group and we were cranking out lockboxes left and right. One of my friends, Eagle Scout, decided to just try the old school style of listening on the old safe to get it to work. We spent 15 minutes breaking into the vault, 40 minutes of doing lockboxes, and 5 minutes planting the dynamite and escaping. His entire time was breaking into that one safe. Madness. He ended up doing it and we beat the record by over $1 million because no one had ever done the safe. Hey, I know this place. I'm actually the owner over there if it's the one I'm thinking of, and I definitely remember you guys. Nobody else ever ended up picking the lock and we removed it from the room before we ended up retiring the entire experience. Just a funny experience. We did an escape room where you have to figure out which employee committed a crime, and it used pictures of the actual employees. They also give you whiteboards to write down clues. I saw a guy on the wall named Matt, so I drew him very crudely on the whiteboard, with a giant arrow saying he did IT. I forgot about it. 20 minutes later and we can't figure it out. So an employee is supposed to come retrieve you, and the person who walks in is freaking Matt. Come to find out Matt is the owner, but we never saw him while we did prior escape rooms. Dude walks in and stands right next to my crappy drawing of him. I was praying to God he didn't turn to his right. He explained that we lost and told us the criminal was him all along. He left without seeing my drawing and I erased it fast as heck. I technically won since I called it was Matt from the beginning, so. Late to the post, but hope you all get a chuckle out of it. We had a bachelor party come through. Quite drunk. We're having a good time, taking their pictures and generally just shooting the crap as everyone gets ready. They start the room and immediately start finishing all of our puzzles in record time. Turns out one is a welder, another is an electrical engineer, one's the owner of a home contracting company. Each one was calling out every part of the room that was fake. I've seen this electronic lock before. It needs a 4-digit code, or yeah, that's a fake weld. This pipe does something, etc. It was hilarious because they're drunk but just absolutely blasting through our room. They still hold the all-time record, which no other team has even come close to. Great guys. I recently went to an escape room where we had a brief before we went in. The employee there told us that some people start ripping up furniture and pulling bricks out of the walls, and that you're not supposed to do that, i.e. everything you can use will be movable visible in the room. If you feel the need to rip open a mattress in the room, you're doing it wrong. We had a similar briefing. She told us the wires going into the walls are supposed to stay in the walls. Please do not rip up the carpets. There is nothing under it but floor. Please do not remove ceiling tiles and crawl into the ceiling. Everything you need will be in the room, easily movable. If it doesn't move, it's not meant to. Had a friend who ran an escape room in an old house. Said she had a group that snuck in tools and disassembled the furniture looking for clues, namely, a metal child's bed and rocker. She had another group that peeled off a layer of wallpaper and punched a hole through the drywall. I also went through with a friend who tore a stuffed animal in half to remove it from a locked box instead of finding the key. I feel like some people that do escape rooms don't realize that other people also have to do the puzzle, so if the solution was punching a hole in a wall or just breaking anything in general that the next group could not also break said already broken items, there is no way that could be the solution. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.